Hey, my name's Austin Gill, and today I'm going to show you how to make better images for the web. Alright, so here I have just a basic website that is loading an image from my domain. And if we look at the code, we have a basic HTML document that has a single image tag with a source and an alt attribute. Now this technically works fine. It's serving the image as expected, but there's a couple problems with this image. For example, on a large screen, this image is going to work just fine. But for users coming to our website on a small screen, they're actually going to be serving a 12,000 pixel wide image on a device that can be maximum, in this case, like 375 pixels. Which means that we're asking them to download a larger image than they actually need to serve, which could take longer to download, and if they're on a mobile data plan, will actually use more data out of their plan. Fortunately, the browser has some features built in that can help us remedy this. Images can have a srcset attribute that allows us to define multiple different sources for that image tag based on certain device characteristics such as the device width, which means we can go back to our code and add a srcset attribute to our image tag. In this case, I'm adding 5 different images with 5 different sizes and their corresponding viewport width. So if we go back to our browser and reload, we see that nothing visually has really changed, but under the hood, there are some changes. So I'll open up my DevTools and reload, and we can see that the image being downloaded is still that same image. And as we go to small screens, we're still dealing with that same image. Nothing has really changed. But when I start on a smaller screen, we'll see things change as I reload here. So now on this tiny screen, we're actually getting the different image. We're getting that same image with the 200 by 100 pixel size. So that size is going to be a lot smaller for the user to download. Now, one problem with just sending a smaller image is what happens if the user resizes their browser to something larger. That image is going to grow and pixelate. But that doesn't happen with srcset attributes, because as we increase the size to those different breakpoints, we can see that new images are being downloaded and put onto the page corresponding with those different breakpoints. So we can see we have from the smallest screen and the smallest image to the largest screen and the largest image. And just to reiterate one more time, if we reload on the large screen, that same behavior doesn't happen as we get smaller, because after all, you can serve a large image on a smaller screen and still have it look good. But you don't necessarily want to download extra images as the screen gets smaller. That's a really handy way to improve user experience by saving on bandwidth and improving performance by serving the right image at the right size. But there's still room for improvement, because although that image was a PNG, modern browsers support new image formats that can be compressed much smaller, so we can serve effectively the same image but in a much smaller file size. Now, once again, the browser has us covered with the HTML picture element. Sort of similar to the srcset attribute, the picture element allows us to define different image sources to serve based on the device characteristics. So we can do things like provide different images based on the device width, or we can even target different pixel densities. But one thing that actually sets the picture element apart from the srcset attribute is we can target different MIME types. So as I mentioned before, modern browsers can support different MIME types such as AVIF or WebP. So much of the time we can actually use these AVIF or WebP formats for images, and they'll be much smaller than their JPEG or PNG counterparts without any noticeable loss in quality. So if we wanted to use the picture element in our example, it might look something like this, where we have the picture tag and then the source for the AVIF format and then the WebP format, and then the image element with the srcset attributes. And if I really wanted to take this to the next level, I could target different device widths and provide different images for those widths based on the AVIF and the WebP format, in addition to just the PNG. And herein lies the dilemma. Although the browser provides us with some very powerful features to serve better images to our users and provide a better experience, it comes at the cost of the developer experience. Because now I have to keep track of all of the different formats and all of the different device widths that I want to target and generate a different version of those images for those widths and those formats, and it just gets out of control. And so one solution may be to add some sort of processing to the images when they are uploaded to whatever service you're building, that it processes them and generates the different formats and the different sizes and stores those details into a database somewhere that you can pull that information from. That would technically work, but it would be a lot of effort. So my recommendation would be to actually outsource that work to a third-party service. Which brings me to the Akamai Image and Video Manager. It's not the only service that offers offers this sort of feature, but it's really awesome and it's the one that I'm most familiar with. So that's what we're gonna look at today. So I've set up an instance of Image Manager at images.austinguild.com. So I can actually go to all of these domains and I can just add the prefix images.austinguild.com. And so far, nothing has really changed that's too interesting. So let's actually get rid of the picture element and go back to just using the image tag. So already our code is simpler and it's reduced the amount of work we have to do. Now let's see how it affects the website. If I reload the page, we can see that the same image is coming across the command line blog cover, but if we explore it, things get a little bit interesting because I'm still making the request for that PNG image, but the response is actually sending a WebP, which is going to be a smaller image size, which means just by turning on the image manager, I'm already saving bandwidth for my users without having to do anything. So that covers improving the formats, but what about that responsive image size? If I open up the website on a small screen and reload, I can still see that it's working by sending that 200 by 100 PNG across. And if I resize the browser, I can see that it's still working where it's sending the larger images for the larger screen sizes. But for this system to work, it still relies on us providing 5 different images with 5 different resolutions. Unfortunately for me, I use WordPress, which just kind of handles that automatically whenever I upload an image. But I know there's a lot of projects out there that don't do that. I mean, just offering image uploads is enough of a feature to add, let alone having to resize different images on each upload. But fortunately for us, because we're using the image manager, we can actually make this process a lot simpler as well. So instead of having these other images with different sizes, I'm actually going to reference the same image that we have above. But I'm going to append a query string parameter that explicitly defines what image I want to target. And I can just clean up this. So we have the sizes for their appropriate screen sizes, and let's see what we've got now. Now, if I reload on this small screen, we can see that we are still referencing that one image at that one URL. The only thing that's changed is the query string parameters. And as we resize, we are getting different images and they're growing with the screen size as well, despite the fact that it's the same image based on that URL. So now we've made our lives easier by only having one image to deal with and not having to generate some sort of process that resizes and stores different versions of that same image. We're just dealing with one URL and some query string parameters. And interestingly enough, we can actually make this whole process even easier. We can actually go back to just referencing this one URL, and the image manager is going to take care of things for us. So for me to really showcase what's going on, let me open this image in a new tab. So here we can see we're just dealing with the single image URL. That's all I'm going to be referencing. And if I hover over the tab, I can see that the dimensions of this image are 12,000 by 600 pixels. But if I open up my DevTools, I can actually simulate a different device, such as an iPhone SE. And if I reload, something changes about this image. Now, technically, it's the same URL, but if I close my DevTools, we can see I have a much smaller image than I had. In fact, the image that's being sent is 640 by 320. Now, that's not something that I had to do any sort of configuration for. I just have the device characteristics that are being sent to the request for this image, and Image Manager is responding with a much smaller image. I can't actually explain what's going on there or how it works. It's just magic, and it's super cool. So if you're an Akamai customer and you're not using this feature, you should get on it right away because it makes your life easier and it makes your users' experience much better. But of course, not everyone is an Akamai customer, and this isn't the only solution that can do some of these things. So I wanted to show you a couple other options. So there's 2 open source projects that I've come across that look like they kind of do the same thing. One of them is called Image Proxy. The other one is called Thumbor. I haven't used either one, but they both look like they have a pretty easy install process if you're comfortable using Docker. So if that's something you want to try, I'll have a link in the descriptions that will give you $100 in free credit for new Linode users. And you can go ahead and use Docker to install one of these services onto that machine and get it configured. And if you get it working and you like it, please come back to this video and send me a comment or message me on Twitter and let me know. Well, that's all I got for you today. I hope you liked this video, and I hope that you implement some of these solutions because focusing on images is a great way to improve user experience by making your website load faster and helping them use less data.